Alpesh Patel of Pryfinian Partners, who you've already seen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Shall we start then with, of course, the story of the day, probably the story of the week. Ratko Mladic in the Financial Times, and his arrest, finally, after 16 years, probably speeds up Serbia's entry into the EU.
Yes, well, what's interesting here, it's been a good month for the good guys, hasn't it? First Bin Laden, and then you've got Mladic. But perhaps they should have sent in US Special Forces, because, of course, what's going to happen now is Mladic, who's alive, is going to go to The Hague and have a cushy little cell, probably a little bit better than his, I think it was his cousin's place in Romania, in the woods somewhere.
In the north of Serbia, I think, yes.
So, you know, he's onto a good thing still. But it's no deterrent. The method we have at the moment with The Hague, OK, it's better than nothing, but it's certainly not a deterrent.
Well, also what's being pointed out regarding this case is what appears to be the irresistible allure of the possibility of joining the European Union, which can push governments into action that perhaps they wouldn't have taken otherwise.
Yeah, because there's other Adriatic countries in the region which are just desperate to stay into the euro. Maybe they can swap places with Greece. That's what they'll do. They'll have a swap.
So Greece has not been a deterrent, really. But let's move on now. This is Kim Jong-il, who wants to resume the talks with his South Korean counterparts.
Yeah, interesting headline. North Korea seeks denuclearization. Well, why did it nuclearize in the first place? Denuclearization with whom? They're the only one who are nuclearized on the Korean peninsula. It's not South Korea. So again, a little bit of a crazy headline here. But if the Chinese could pull it off, if they could speak to the North Koreans and say, look, indeed, dump the nuclear missiles, give them to us, us being the Chinese, then it'll be a good pull off. But it looks like they certainly seem to speak the same language, as it were. What's interesting is the Chinese just had a state visit from the Pakistanis as well, so they sort of seem to be doing a terror network enclave at the moment.
Well, we've been watching the Obama entourage. We've seen the Beast travelling the streets of London, Air Force One and whatever. The dear leader apparently prefers to travel by train, takes his time about it, and the train is resupplied at every so often with his favourite treats, like lobster.
I thought you were going to say...
No,
well, I'm going to say... Not that he's going to sue or
Le
anything.
Figaro, talking of luxury.
Yes.
Now, Le Figaro seems to be outraged by DSK and the fact that his little hideaway it costs a huge amount of money to rent.
It's hardly little as well, by the size of it.
Yeah, it's got its own cinema and whatever. So, I mean, this points to the benefits of having a very wealthy wife, doesn't it?
Well, Le Figaro should be reassured that at least the place won't be cleaned, because apparently you can't find a cleaner for love nor money. You mentioned his wife. It looks like the defence may be one of consent, i.e. that in the case of the alleged rape, that the alleged victim was consenting. If that's the case, I suspect DSK, when he did meet his wife, wanted to be back in prison, actually.
Let's talk very quickly about the possible successor, then, of DSK at the IMF. Christine Lagarde seems to be the front runner.
It looks like it's a pretty sealed job, and there doesn't seem to be somebody on the flip side. It'll be interesting to see what she says about the Greek scenario. At the moment, she seems to be keeping a little bit quiet on that, because she really does want this role and doesn't want to jeopardise it by saying too much.
Right, but on the subject of Greece, obviously, that was our subject of discussion in World Business Report, and it's certainly on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. These comments from Jean-Claude Juncker. How should we interpret this? On the one hand, is he saying, look, there has to be some form of restructuring because clearly the medicine that Greece is taking is not working? Or is this simply a warning shot across the bows to Greece to say, look, get your plan B straightened up because it's either non-existent or simply riddled with holes?
I think it's a warning shot to the ECB and to the Germans to say we're not just going to write blank cheques. And what effectively the IMF is saying is, yes, if you want our next tranche of payments, then we need to see the 12-month plan. It doesn't come automatically. Don't take us for granted. And we are an important power broker in this relationship. So it is a threat they're making. It's a credible threat. I don't suspect he intended it to end up on the front page and be threatening the value of the euro.
Which is exactly what it's doing, because that's what the markets have factored in. If you actually look at the behaviour of the bond markets, there's possibility that Greece will default. It's no longer remote. It's actually very close to home.
Yeah, what they need to do, what the Greeks actually need to do, is say, look, we've tried everything, but we can't manage this. It's too much for us, and we're not going to be paying. But not just them, because remember, it's the bailout element. But the Germans probably need to say, you know what, forget it. We're not going to be stuffing our people with this kind of bill.
Having said that, they are actually moving into Athens and looking at snapping up Greek assets. For example, the telecoms
which they're
company.
reluctant to sell.
Yeah.
Well, I think they wanted to buy one or two of the Greek islands, didn't they? Yeah.
And the Parthenon?
Well, at least they're doing it this way and not the way it's been done in the past.
OK, we're going to the China Morning Post again. And Charlie Brown management, it sounds fascinating.
Well, yeah, you know, he's got a valid point. The share price with this fund manager saying that Steve Ballmer isn't performing. The guy does come across, this Ballmer does come across as a bit of a goof when he's on stage. He's not necessarily the slickest, smoothest operator. But more seriously, when you look at the share price of Microsoft, I declare an interest. I'm a Microsoft shareholder. I don't quite have as much as Bill Gates does in the company, but regardless, you know, the share price has been disappointing given that they have this near monopoly status and the power and influence that brings in terms of profitability. But they just keep on being number two. Others are more innovative, others are more creative, whether it's Apple or Google, and then Microsoft end up having to throw a lot of money at it. And yes, whilst they're profitable, they're not the front runner in every sector, which you would expect. That
so
innovation's lacking.
And design.
Yeah, and maybe the guy's been there too long. He's been there since day one.
But then, having said that, this guy David Einhorn, who's actually made this Charlie Brown comparison, is he a lone voice? How much weight is there behind this? Because clearly, Ballmer will go if there's more than one of these key shareholders who are actually standing up and saying, well, it's time for you to go.
There doesn't seem to be a shareholder revolt.
Yet.
I haven't yet read. I haven't read anywhere else this call. However, this could be the first. Where now you'll start getting other shareholders, major institutions saying, well, actually, yeah, why not get some other talented management in? This guy's been on the board of Microsoft since it was created, and he isn't the same talent as a Steve Jobs, quite clearly, in terms of inspiring the people and creating innovation.
Now, our final story, and I know that you're going to have something to say about this, Alpesh, in the Daily Telegraph, is that selective deafness is actually real. Now, this is something I've claimed for the longest time. I'm sure you've claimed it from time to time, haven't you? But it's actually real.
He's not listening. Well, you've proved your point.
I tell you, the best line in this was where the researcher said, I suspect men are more susceptible, but that's not based on any scientific knowledge.
There you go.
That's based on him thinking.
Yeah, we all do.
Him at home thinking, yeah, well, okay,
I think there's a clear gender divide, though. Men do tune out as and when it suits them, notably when the wife says it's your turn to actually do the washing up, or would you mind getting your dirty linen together, please?
If only they would realise, why bother saying it then? You know? How much of a hint do you need from us? You know, we're not listening.
Alpesh, I would love to say it's lovely to see you, and in fact it is. Alpesh Patel, our favourite newspaper reviewer from Pryfinian Partners. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you very much indeed for joining us, Juliet and I, here at BBC World News this morning.
Thank you.